In this one, we're going to have a look at testing our API. So we'll get a nice test setup created. We'll have a test database. We'll pull in some packages which are going to help us make those requests or simulate requests to our API, and also make assertions against the schema or the JSON which we get back. So the first thing we're going to do is actually set up our test database, because I think it's important to have a separate test database. Not essential, but it means that you're not polluting your development database with test data, and also it means we can have a setup which starts in the exact same state for every test, so that you don't have other developers that like adding new records in there which make your test fail, things like that. Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you'd like to join a growing group of software developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe, click the little notification icon, and welcome. Now, you may or may not be familiar with Symfony already, but I'll show you how the test database setup works in there. So if we go back and have a look at our env file where we determined our database URL here, and we said that our database name would be products API. If we go over to the config folder here, and in packages test doctrine.yaml, you'll see that we have DB name suffix. So ignore this part on the end here, this environment variable thing, but what we're looking at is this. So what that means, it will append the word underscore test onto the end of your database, and so we're going to just run a couple of commands and that will create us a test database with that name. So back to our notes. The command that we need in order to create our test database is this one, so I'll paste this in my terminal and I'll explain this to you. So Symphony console, it's all the same as when we created our development database, except here after Symphony console we're saying env equals test, and then by doing that it will then create us a test environment database. Let's hit go. Okay, and so it's saying it's created products API test database. I'm going to go over to Table Plus and just make sure that I have that there. Okay, and so here's my products API test database. Obviously there's no tables in there yet because we need to go and migrate our schema. Let's go and do that next. So the next command is this one, Symphony console, and again we're passing env test, and it's just doctrine migrations migrate. I'll copy that, paste that in there, run that, and it'll ask me if I'm sure. I'll just say yes. Okay, and so it's saying that it's migrating my database. Let's go back to Table Plus, refresh. Great stuff. So now we have a manufacturer table and a product table. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to composer require some packages, and they are Alice. Because we're using Symphony Flex, we can just use a short name for these. So Alice, Symphony Test Pack, Symphony HTTP Client, and something called JSON Schema. So what are these? Alice is used to generate fake fixture data. Symphony Test Pack includes PHPUnit and PHPUnit Bridge. HTTP Client is what the API platform test client is built on. So HTTP client is a Symphony component for making requests, and JSON Schema provides JSON Schema test assertions. Okay, so let's go and pull that in. The next thing I'm going to do is set up some test fixtures. So inside of a fixtures folder, which you see here, I'm just going to add a YAML file for the manufacturer and one for the product. And so I'll just paste in something which I've previously created. Should be self-explanatory. This is saying that this is the entity or the model that this is based on. This is what can be used to reference each particular record. So we'll be able to reference a manufacturer from our product fixtures, and then here is how we create each of the fields. So this is just going to give it a company name. This will just provide some text for the description. It will generate a country code for the country code and a date time for the listed date. So now let's go over to our product fixture or product YAML file, and we'll do the same here. Okay, so let me just talk you through this. It's the same as what we did for the manufacturer. So again, our entity is the product, and then we're going to create 100 this time. So what this is we're creating products from number 1 to 100. MPN, I've just used ISBN because that's probably the closest thing I can think of, that there's no special item in Faker in order to generate MPN, so I'm just using that. Name, I've just gone with catchphrase. These things aren't really that important. Description, just creating a sentence made up of 6 words. Issue date, again using a date time. Manufacturer, because if you think about our products, we can't create products without a manufacturer, so what this will do is it will just reference manufacturers from our manufacturer YAML file here. So where we're saying manufacturer underscore 1 to 10, what this will do is it will reference one of those for each of the products. I'll go back to my notes file, and so we have a command here which will load our fixtures that we just created. So grab this, and then I'll go and paste this in here. And again, make sure that you are in test environment when you run this, otherwise you'll end up populating your development database. Okay, let's hit go. And it'll ask you if you want to continue. Okay, so these notices here, they're just a deprecation notice. I'll show you how we can get rid of these for our tests, but it's not come back with any errors, so that's telling me that this has actually worked first time, which is a bit of a miracle because that has rarely happened before. Refresh. Okay, great stuff. So it looks like we have 100 products. Perfect, and we also have 10 manufacturers. We'll just check the manufacturer IDs on our products. Yep, they run 1 to 10. Okay, so that's worked perfectly first time. Great stuff. We're now ready to actually go and start writing our tests, I think. So the folder is tests, and in here we'll just create one test. So I would normally split things down into like unit tests and feature tests and things like that, but I'm only going to create one test here because I'm just showing you how you can do this. If you're building your own API, then obviously you'll go and put a bit more effort into your folder structures and things like that. So we'll call this products test, and this will extend a test case called API test case, and that will give us some of the tools we need. So things like being able to simulate the HTTP request will have a client, and also some API specific assertions will be available to us. In order for all tests to start in the same state, we're going to pull in a little trait here called refresh database trait, and we're just going to have a little look in the comments and see what it says about this. Basically it's saying that it purges and loads the fixtures before the first test and wraps all the tests in the transaction that will be rolled back when it is finished. So that means that each test in our products test will start in exactly the same state with the same fixtures loaded. Okay, so I'm going to add a test for getting a collection. So test get collection. So here we're going to get a collection of products, and the way I can do that is like this. So static, and then create client, so that will give us our HTTP client, and then we're going to send a request which will be a get request. So the method is the first argument. The second argument is the URL, so that will be for us API products. I can check for a successful response like this. Assert response is successful, and that's all I need to do there. I can check headers. So assert response header same, and so we shall say content type, and I expect it to have this value here, application /LD plus JSON semicolon, character set is UTF-8. And then I can actually make assertions about the body. So this assert JSON, I'm looking for JSON contain. So I'm not looking for an exact match, I'm just making sure that the JSON which comes back does contain a subset which I specify. And so here you can pass it in array format, and I'm just going to paste in some work which I've previously done, because you don't want to see me type all this out. And so we're asserting that our JSON should contain this subset here. So it's all the stuff that you've seen using Postman, using the user interface thing. We're looking at our context, our ID, and then we've also got stuff regarding our pagination here under the Hydra view. And so I'm going to run this test initially, but I'm expecting this to fail because I've not actually set up pagination on my product yet. So let's go and run this. Okay, and so look for our failure, and here we're getting incorrect pagination because it's just my product is currently using default pagination. So in order to be able to test that and to demonstrate it, I really want to set up my own pagination. So we'll go over to product, and here under our API resource, I'm just going to add a new one, and I'm just going to borrow the one from manufacturer. So attributes pagination items per page is 5, which should make my test pass. So we should now get 20 pages in total. The last page should be 20 because 100 divided by 5 should give us 20. Let's go and run this. Okay, and this time we are green. So you'll see that we're getting these deprecation notices here, which I mentioned earlier. If we go to our notes, I've actually got a piece or a line which we can add to our PHPUnit file. So go over to PHPUnit XML dist, which you'll find in your project root, and just in here, see where you have the PHP tags and you have these server variables. Just drop that underneath there, and all we're saying is just disable our Symphony deprecations helper. Let's go and run this again. Okay, so this time we get our one test, 3 assertions, but we don't have those annoying deprecation notices in the way. Let's go and make an assertion about the number of items which are returned. So in order to do this, I'm just going to grab a response here. And what I'll do, because we're filling up our page a bit, is I'll make my font a little bit smaller. So we'll go with 22. Okay, and then just down here, I can say this assert count, because we're counting the items in an array. We should get 5 items, and if I say response to array, it will take our response and convert it to an array, and then we can count certain items, and we're going to count Hydra members. Okay, 1 test, 4 assertions this time. So I'm happy with that test. Let's now go and test pagination. So we'll hit another endpoint, except this time we'll head for page 2. We'll append page 2 or page 3 or something on the end of that. So test pagination. Okay, I'm going to go and borrow some of this stuff here. So I'll go and grab it all, but we'll just edit out the stuff that we don't really need. All I want to look at here really is the keys that we get here for our pagination. So we're going to make the request, we'll get a response. I'll not bother checking headers, we know that all that stuff works. What we're going to do here though is say page equals 2. And so that means that some of these things will change. We're getting back page 2. First will remain the same, last will remain the same, next will be 3, but we also want a previous. So I'll just drop that down there. I'll say Hydra previous, and that will be page 1. And I'll not bother doing a count. So yeah, like I say, basically I'm just looking to make sure that we get the correct pagination details back. Let's go and run this. Okay, 2 tests, 5 assertions. Let's just change some of these values. We'll change this to 18, for example, just to make sure. Okay, and it failed, so that's good. We'll change that back and we'll test something else. Let's create a product. Test create product. Okay, so similar to making a GET request, all the we require the HTTP client, we make the request, except this time we're going to make a post request. So request, and the method will be post. And so we're going to need some more information this time. The URL will be the same, so we're posting to API products, but now we're going to need an array, and we're going to say JSON, and then we're going to pass an array of all of the properties, all the fields which we wish to fill on our newly created product. So I've just gone and pasted some stuff in there behind the scenes. All the usual stuff: NPN, name, description, issue date. The only risky strategy I'm taking here is I'm making the assumption that we have a manufacturer with an ID of 1 in our test fixtures which we created. So I do know that I have that. However, if we were to refresh this or run this again, then because it's a auto incrementing ID, it would actually start from 11, wouldn't it? So it means that I wouldn't have a manufacturer ID of 1. So I'm not going to change it, I'm going to leave it the way it is, but it's just to let you know that this is probably could be done better. The way you could do it better would be to actually make a request, actually send a request off to retrieve a manufacturer and just use the ID for the first manufacturer that you get back. But that's just a little hint or a little tip there that you could use. This time our response code should be a 201, so this assert response status code, same 201. Headers should be the same as the last test, or the first test, so we'll just go and grab that. Okay, so while I was recording this, I noticed an issue, and that was that the issue date wasn't writable, which meant that we weren't going to be able to write that to the database when we did this. So go over to your product and make the issue date also writable by saying product write. We'll make some assertions about the response body. So again, assert JSON contains. And so we're just looking to make sure that all these things are correct. The only thing I've made a bit different here is that this is a format that the issue date is going to come back in, even though we sent it off in this format. So just something to be aware of there. Let's actually go and run this and see how we get on. Okay, so we get 3 tests, 8 assertions. So you should be getting the gist of this now. Rather than see me type out these tests in full, what I'll do is I'll just paste them in and explain my way through them as we go. Okay, this time we're testing that we can update a product. So test update product. Setup is the same. Client create client. We're making a put request, but this time notice we've appended on a ID for the product which we want to update, whereas when we created a product we just needed to hit the endpoint API products. This time we need to specify which product is going to be, so I've gone with API products number 1, and then we're just going to update the description. So here we're saying an updated description, and then check that we get a successful response, and then we're just checking the JSON which comes back. Let's go and run this. Okay, so that's good. Then we'll do one final test we'll try and actually trigger some validation errors by sending incorrectly formatted body content or something like that. And so this is the test that I've created for this test create invalid product, and I've picked this case specifically because I noticed a mistake in my code, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and fix that, but I'm going to drive it out using a test. So here I'm saying static create client, we're making a post request to products, and then we're going to create a product. And this time I'm passing manufacturer null, which really we should have to pass a manufacturer in order to create a product record, because a product must have a manufacturer. But let's just go and see what happens when I run this. Okay, so I'm expecting a validation error. So here this assert response status code same 422. However, that's not what I'm getting back. It's saying failed asserting that the response status code is 422. If you notice here, the response status code is 201 created, which means it's been able to go ahead and actually create that record, which tells me that there's a problem with my code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to product and just have a look at this, and I'm going to put a not null assertion in here. So assert not null, we'll drop that in here. Okay, and then we'll go and run the tests again and see what it tells us. Okay, and this time we have another failure. Failed asserting that response status code is 201 on line 68 of products test. So what's going on here? Let's go over to products test, and we're looking at line 68. So here, where we're saying assert response status code same 201, that's not what we're actually getting. We're not actually creating that record. And the reason is, even though we're passing a manufacturer string here, we haven't actually enabled write for manufacturer on our product. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go and add that now. And we'll tidy this up a bit because it's getting a little bit messy. We'll drop this onto its own line. Okay, back to our test. Let's run it and see where we get this time. And so that tells us that we are getting a 201 saying the product has been correctly created, and it's also being correctly created with that manufacturer ID as well. And so we'll leave it there. Hopefully that's been helpful. You've probably been able to see that you could actually build your entire application just by using tests. It means we don't actually have to keep going over to Postman or going over to the user interface. We can stay in the same places where our code lives, just write our tests, go make any changes we need to make to our entities, to our attributes or things like that, as and when the test lets us know that something's going wrong. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like YouTube to show you more of my content, all you need to do is subscribe and click the notification icon. Each week I release a number of new recordings. If you'd like to be informed about my upcoming videos, as well as receive exclusive content, discounts and early access to my new videos, you can join my mailing list by following the link underneath this video.